Welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, capital markets analyst and host of your Cannabis Business Podcast. Today we've got Nikki Furrer. She is an author of A Woman's Guide to Cannabis. Nikki, thanks for being back on the podcast, or thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So Nikki, you're a cannabis lawyer, cultivator, CEO of Fleur, cannabis company that develops strains and products with a focus on women's health. You've worked as a budtender and a grower in Denver, standing behind the counter with every product on the Colorado medical market, helping patients find the best medicine for them. So your oils and edibles and topicals are popular products in Illinois. And then before joining the marijuana industry, you had a bookstore called Pudd'nhead's, an independent bookstore, and you're based in Missouri, where you're still writing some of the legal framework for your clients in Illinois. Is that right?
Absolutely. I help people do their applications to get licenses. So Illinois is doing these social equity craft licenses where you just get a little bit of space to grow, or dispensary. So I'm helping teams turn in their paperwork for that.
Perfect. And so we'll have all your contact information in the show notes. But today's podcast topic is The Woman's Guide to Cannabis, this recent book of yours. It's about women of all ages using cannabis to feel better, look better. And no wonder the right dose will relieve anxiety, lift depression, melt stress, reduce inflammation, and mitigate the onset of dementia and other signs of aging. Plus, it'll boost your mood, ease aches and pains, even help you lose weight and give you a great night's sleep. And a dose just for fun? Well, that works too. So if you're equal parts curious and apprehensive, and you're a one-time smoker who's coming back, or someone enjoying the benefits of cannabis and eager to learn more, this lively, knowing, and information-filled book is just the supportive guide you need. So there's a few questions I want to dive into, starting with part one, which is why we should use cannabis. So from your own personal experience, you mentioned in the intro as well as page 13 about cannabis for pain relief. So tell me a little bit about your own experience and how you got involved with cannabis. Were you involved in an auto accident?
I was. I originally got into the cannabis industry because my brother has seizures. So that's why I moved out to Denver and sort of got going. But then when I got to Illinois, they called us all to Springfield to explain how none of us were following the rules as cultivators. So we went to an all-day meeting, and then I left Springfield and was driving back to the little town where I was working, and the car went off the road and I fractured a vertebrae. And at the time, we were all, as cultivators, getting product to market. This was a very busy time. And I was working for a nonprofit that supports people with disabilities, and I just did not want to let them down. So I was back at work 9 days after I fractured my spine. And I was cutting clones with the brace on, sort of leaning against the grow tables, almost in tears, because I was so afraid of the opioids too. So when I left and they tried to give me the opioid prescription, I was like, no, I just give me the step above Tylenol. I don't want to end up in rehab over these things. And so I didn't have, and in the workday, I'm not going to get myself too loopy on anything. So it was difficult to get through that. And so walk around with a fractured spine and cut clones and grow plants and do inspections and everything else. But it worked better than anything else. Luck would have it, somehow. I'm partly psychic. I've always thought this. But the day before the accident, I had just made a huge batch of chocolate chip cookies for no reason. Just highly dosed cookies, a whole stash of them at my house. So thank God I had those. And those sort of got me through the first couple of weeks of the fractured spine. I would not have made it without them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had subluxation in C3, C4 in my neck from a really bad auto accident, and can't recommend cannabinoids enough, not only for pain, but also for health. And so you mentioned that cannabis is a superfood, kind of hoping you might unpack that, because most people don't know about it being a neuroprotectant, that there's a US patent. They probably don't think about it as a superfood either. So can you tell us a little bit about your experience using cannabis as a superfood?
It's just because we put so much emphasis on, we do put a lot of emphasis on pain relief and everything else, but with the cannabis, it's so anti-inflammatory. And my mom's always telling me to, drink kombucha and have the blueberry smoothie and all of these foods that are supposed to be such high in antioxidants and anti-inflammatories and good for us, but cannabis does the exact same thing. And I don't have to drink a smoothie to get it. And I don't have to go anywhere near the kombucha. I can't stand it. So I think it's part of a balanced diet more than it is a drug for some people. For people that need it for very intense pain relief and everything else, it is a drug. I don't want to take that away from them. But for a lot of us that are sort of walking around okay, I do think it's so preventative of so many things too, that it really is something that we need in our diets on a regular basis, just like we need bananas on a regular basis.
There's a lot of stereotype misinformation about the stoner foods and just munchies and it makes you lazy, and so there's a lot of that put on indicas, if you will, just kind of that label. And yet we know from cannabinoids like THCV that it could be used for weight loss. What's your experience, or what are you writing about cannabis for weight loss?
For a lot of people, CBD can be an anti-suppressant, especially in higher doses. It does sort of negate the munchies a little bit. And that it's fun to talk about, the snacks and everybody going crazy over the eating things when they get high. It tends to be sort of a beginner behavior. Once people get used to marijuana on a regular basis, I think the munchie thing kind of settles down a little bit. I know if I need to eat, plain baked chicken and broccoli and something I don't want to eat, yes, let's smoke a joint before that dinner because it's going to go down easier. So I think it does help us eat the things we're supposed to eat. It helps balance our systems. The other thing I like about the weight loss is that it does help balance the blood sugar, and that keeping your blood sugar in check is so important. You can't get the weight off if you don't have your blood sugar in check. So for diabetics and stuff, I think marijuana really does sort of help maintain homeostasis for them.
And we'll get into the endocannabinoid system in just a moment. But before we do that, wanted to touch on the active cannabis lifestyle. So yoga recommendations. So are people smoking before they go into the yoga studio?
I do.
And how does that work out for you? Is it make you more limber or just get into the zone?
It's so much easier to get into the meditation, to get focused, to get settled, to be still. My mind is not racing about a million different things I need to do. I know that there's a lot of sort of cannabis and yoga together. When I was in Denver a couple of months ago, I went to one that I really liked, Bend and Blaze, where you can smoke in the class itself.
That's a cultivated synergy in the Rhino district, right?
Yes, where they have all the murals on the outside. Yes. It was a really nice space. Denver was not like that 5 years ago.
Right.
That we just done well for Denver. It's a pretty little neighborhood now. But yeah, that and at that Bend and Blaze class, I realized I like smoking inside, but I don't need to breathe anyone else's smoke inside. For me, the smoking in the class part, I would prefer to just smoke my joint outside and then come into the class. But I'm old. I'm 45 years old. I'm Gen X. I remember weed in the 90s. I have always had to sneak around. I used to get weed from calling a payphone and pagers. These millennials like to go out in groups, to activities. And this is what they told me at the class. I'm not making this up. A millennial was telling me this. They don't know what it's like to have to stand behind the dumpster to smoke their joint and not get caught and then come to the class. All they've ever known is legal weed. So they've never had to hide it. They've never had to be discreet. And they've never been able to smoke inside anywhere, anything. So for them, the novelty of smoking inside is better than the habit of doing it before getting to class.
Yeah, it must be nice.
Right, I know. So I think the marijuana yoga classes tend to maybe be for the younger people. I'm not really sure. That was my experience then. I like them. They're fun, but but for me, I already have my way. I do know a lot of people that use the marijuana, and then go do the heavy stuff, the CrossFit, the running, the real cardio exercise, not just laying around on a yoga mat. And for them, they are part of the small dose, micro dosing thing, because you can't get too stoned and go running. You're going to get lost. The first time I put on a transdermal patch, walking around the Capitol Hill in Denver, I was taking my dog for a walk. It was 3 blocks from my apartment the whole time. I couldn't find my way home because I didn't realize how intense this patch was going to be. And I was too stoned, just walking the dog around. So you can't get too high and go exercise. It's not going to go well. So the lower dose balanced THC, CBD tends to be really popular with the athletic people that are using it for workouts. Mm-hmm. And for the older people like me who are 45, the recovery period is much better. The sore muscles, the ouch, the I can't stand up or sit down the next day kind of feeling, marijuana definitely helps with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the CEO, Antonio, and his wife, Heather, are in Missouri with Greenhouse Healthy, and they're both runners and activists, and they love getting high and running. That's their thing. But I think, being outdoors is much different for our age group. I remember when people were smoking on planes. So for me, whether it was a bar or an airplane, I cannot stand smoke inside just because of my previous experience with it. And so I'm very cognizant of that and aware of other people and how that affects them. And so I go outside mostly for other people, not for me. I could sit there and smoke a blunt, but I don't like cigars. And so I'm smoking a blunt is my guilty pleasure. I try to do that away from people. I've gone to the barber where the barber was like gasping for air and then trying to cut my hair really quick and then going up again and getting some air and coming back down. And he was just like, bro, next time, like, I can't do this. But so how do you have that conversation? Like this next part, you talk about mom and weed and how to start that conversation. And so one of the classic commercials is the kid in the bed and he's got his own stash. And then the dad walks in and he's like, son, why would you do this? And then the kid goes, well, I learned it by watching you.
Right.
So how do you start that conversation and make it normalized? Because in Amsterdam or Holland in general, people very rarely smoke. It's a tourist thing. And that's because they've been taught not only sex ed, but cannabis and drugs. And so it's not a novelty. They don't wait till they're 21 and say, I can't wait to get hammered. Like it's just normal to them. And so they don't even partake. How do we begin that conversation to normalize it?
I have had many, many, many women send me messages and texts and everything else saying either I got this book and read it and I gave it to my mom, or my mom gave this to me, or somehow it started the conversation. And at this point, before I even wrote the book, my mother is a baby boomer. She's like the first year of boomers. She's the first year of boomers, and I'm one of the last of the Gen X. So we're a rare combination, but she and all of her friends have been asking me for weed for years. These older women, and the older men too, but definitely these older women have heard this will help your arthritis. This will help you sleep better. This will help something. And they all want to try it. It's the new coconut oil. They don't care that it's marijuana. It might make them feel better, so they want it. There really is no hesitation on their part. And these are Midwestern conservative Catholics. These are not, coastal progressives. These are women that are going to fish fries and church on Sundays, but they still want marijuana in their hand cream. And they want it more than my 45-year-old friends do. My friends are too busy still with kids and everything else. But I think these I don't even know what to call them. I feel bad calling them boomers because now the millennials are making fun of them, but the boomers are into it. You don't have to talk them into it. They're ready. They know. You just have to educate them because it is different now. And even for people my age, the marijuana is different than it was in the 90s. You cannot go smoke a whole joint like you used to by yourself. It's just too strong now. And that because we've got so many new products and 45-year-olds are trying to figure out dabs and vape pens and how many milligrams I should eat in an edible. There's all this new information that everybody's got that even if you did do it in college, we do need to catch you up to now.
Mhm.
so that you can walk into a dispensary and pick out basically the right vape pen is what you're looking for, because that turns out that's what everybody wants. Um, but I do think talking about that with parents and with siblings. I talk to my sister and we talk to mom, and I do think this is now becoming a family topic of conversation.
Mhm. Yeah, it's interesting. My mom is also from the South, and we grew up on the West Coast, though. And yeah, I got grounded when she found pot in one of my jeans, in high school, like my
Oh
senior
yeah,
year. And now
she
she's
hasn't
asking
always
me,
been cool with it. This is new.
she's asking me about CBD now. So it's only
Mhm.
taken about 2 decades, but it's starting to come out. So is CBD, that gateway that's getting people into, cannabis and other cannabinoids outside of CBD?
It is part of it. It is part of it. That is, and with my mother, I was able to, I ordered seeds online and grew them at home and made an oil and gave them to my brother, and then the seizure stopped. And after 24 hours of seizures, we went, hey, Mom, have you noticed? Joey hasn't had a seizure. Well, I gave him this. Please go watch this CNN video that just came out. So I was able to sort of talk her through it as it's a medicine and it works, and it already worked. Not like, hey, we want to try this. I don't recommend doing it without people's permission, but I knew there was no other way with my mother. But since the success with my brother, and seeing what it's done for me and for other people, she's completely in favor of it now.
Hmm. So there's a lot of information about CBD and THC. There's about 485 plus other cannabinoids that people
Mhm.
don't know about. And the circuitry on which they run is very invisible to people. The endocannabinoid system, I explain, is kind of the circuitry in your house, whereas um, the lighting switch, each individual switch is a system. Your digestive system or your nervous system, your immune system, all of these things run on your circuit board, the circuit board being the endocannabinoid system. And so if your ECS is deficient, you're really running on fumes. So part 2 of your book talks about how cannabis makes us healthy and happy. Um, when trying to educate people on ECS, how do you go about doing it? What have you written? What have you talked about? And what are the responses?
And this is, I go into the endocannabinoid system with patients to help them figure out what kind of product they're looking for. If they are looking for something for arthritis, sometimes they want the hand cream and sometimes they want the vape pen. But they don't always know that the hand cream's not going to get them high. Sometimes they do want to get high from the hand cream. So we have to explain the endocannabinoid system and where those receptors are and what they do and how we can get to them. Um, and then that helps them decide whether or not they're going to get an edible or a vape pen or a topical or anything else. So that I do think it's part of the basic education everyone should have, so that they can, decide what makes them feel better. Um, and that you can get as technical as you want with that. The problem is we just don't have um, decades of medical research and science and everything like we do with everything else.
Mhm.
We have to deal with the medical research that we've got at the moment. And everything I've seen is that said that THC and CBD work better together.
Mhm.
And splitting them up does no good. So now that I'm, pretty much focused on product development, and that's it, I do think about those hundreds of other cannabinoids we haven't identified yet. They're in that oil. Why are we refining that oil and taking all that good stuff out just because we haven't figured out yet that we need it? And when I put those products on the market using unrefined oil straight out of the CO2 machine, leaving the wax in there, leaving it a little green, leaving the flavor in there, because then we've got terpenes in there. Um, Patients responded and said that edible helped me better than any other edible I've ever tried. And I cannot explain why, except I know that there are dozens of other cannabinoids in there we haven't identified yet.
Mhm.
And they are doing their jobs as well. So I think we're at the tip of the iceberg. And we know a lot more than we did a few decades ago.
Mhm.
But I do think there's a whole lot more to learn. And Yeah, we'll be breeding plants for cannabinoids we don't even know about yet.
I was always a fan of hash, and I never really knew why. I just kind of thought I was old school, but then learning more about full spectrum versus an isolate we call a hot dog water on this podcast. So learning about full extract cannabis oil, or FICO, is important to know the difference. Dr. Ethan Russo talks about the entourage effect of adding CBD and THC. And in your book, you mentioned it being more being more absorbed into the receptor cells as it becomes more bioavailable with the addition of CBD and THC together. Otherwise, it just kind of sits or floats on top of your CB1, CB2 receptor cells. Whereas if you add THC, that CBD can be fully, or at least more absorbed, more bioavailability. So hopefully more people like Dr. Ethan Russo will get that word out and help kind of spread the word.
Yeah, people listen to him. They don't listen to me, but they listen to him. So hopefully they keep doing that. I wish we could call them, instead of calling them landrace strains, I wish we could call them heirloom strains.
Yeah.
And say this is a strain with a balance of THC and CBD, just like if it grew in the wild. Nobody has bred this for high THC. That I want to see more strains like that, where we have not adjusted it just for the high, but we are growing it for as many cannabinoids and terpenes as possible.
So a lot of people, you probably witnessed this as a bud tender when you were in Denver, when people would ask what the highest THC is at the lowest price point, and then that's how they would figure out what brand they were going to start buying.
Yes.
Whereas terpenes that you mentioned on page 49 are really the direction that people want to go. And so it was explained on an earlier podcast from the CEO of Panacea and a member of True Terpenes, David Haldreth, mentioned that the steering wheel on a car is like terpenes. It gives you the direction you want to go, whereas the percentage is just how fast you get there. So have you found a lot of good experience or customer satisfaction by incorporating terpenes into your products?
I have not added extra terpenes to any product yet. I'm not going to say I'm not going to do it. I just haven't done it yet. I have sort of worked with what we've grown in the plant. The one thing I've done, I bought some of it at the dispensary and took the label off so I could take a picture of it and use it for an Instagram post to explain to people that terpenes are more important than THC. And I would get the paper if I knew where it was. I can't see it in my house right now. But professionally speaking, I opened an independent bookstore. I passed the New York bar exam. I've done some stuff. I'm more proud of the fact that here's the container, when I put Shelby County's flower out on the market, on the label, the state requires THC, CBD, THCA, CBDA, but Shelby County also puts the terpenes from the lab testing on the label. And it will tell you which are the 3 highest testing terpenes in that flower. One other cultivator copied that and is doing it now. 10 other cultivators in Illinois are not doing it. They have more money than the nonprofit. They've got more kids working in marketing. They've got more people working on the labels, yet they can't get it done. Most states now at this point require THC and CBD on the label. I wish we required terpenes. It's right there on the lab test that you get with the THC and CBD. You can put them on the label. But that I have 2 huge issues with the cannabis industry. Number 1 is RSO, and I don't think we should say it anymore. And number 2 is terpenes on the label. I don't think you should be allowed to sell flower unless you had it tested for terpenes and you put it on the label. That's what's in there with the potency. So patients can know. I know what terpenes I like at this point only because I've been growing and breeding and looking at lab tests for quite some time now. But other people haven't figured that out, and they need to. They need to know I like the strains with merthrine, and then they can go looking for that. We're still guessing based on smell, and that seems kind of Stone Age to me. When we have lab testing right there, just put it on the label. It's not hard.
Now,
I will come to your office and teach you how to do it for free. For free.
Yeah.
I will come to Chicago and hit every cultivator's office and show you how to put them on the labels. Look at the test results for each batch, just like you do the potency, just so patients can know what they're buying.
Yeah, definitely take you up on that one. What's up with Rick Simpson Oil? What would you change it to? Phoenix Tears or just a different name?
I don't care what you call it. FICO, that's fine. Cannabis oil, I don't care. But you spent $150,000, $200,000 on a CO2 machine system. You hired a kid with too much education to run it. You're putting all your plants in it. Your investors' money is in this. And then you make the best oil in the world with a CO2 machine. And then you label it with a name from the black market with terpene as the solvent. And it's just a horrible mess. Why would you make the world's best cannabis oil and then name it after something crappy? Quit calling it RSO. Patients see this online and get confused. In Illinois, this was a big thing for a while, explaining what RSO was. And now even they're saying RYO. I don't even know what that is. But that I wish, just call it cannabis oil. Call it full extract. Call it CO2 oil. Who cares? Just quit calling it Rick Simpson oil, because that's not what it is. Rick Simpson oil is made with terpene that has not been purged. So it's not safe and it's not healthy.
Interesting. Well, let's look at when buying cannabis, what to ask and what to look for. We did a podcast back in August about the importance of budtenders. And so you mentioned that budtenders are the key for a successful shopping experience.
Absolutely.
Unpack that a little bit.
Absolutely. Here's the thing. In that I used to own a bookstore, and this is how it goes. When you walk into a bookstore and you go, I'm looking for a book. I don't know what kind of book, but I know I like mysteries. And so you go to the person behind the counter and they know all the mysteries in the store. They know the new ones that are coming out. They knew the ones that came out 2 years ago. So you tell them, this is what I'm looking for. And they can go, oh yeah, I know exactly what you want. And they can go pull a book for you because they've read all those books. There is a mystery bookstore in New York that if I'm in New York for 20 minutes, I will go to this bookstore. I'll go to this bookstore before I get a bagel. Because it's only mysteries and they know every book. And they've known every mystery written since the 50s. And they've just got it down, and they can recommend a stack of 10 books that I'm going to love. A good budtender does the same thing. You can walk into a dispensary and get somebody who knows backwards and forwards all of that inventory behind the counter and can figure out exactly what you need, or you can get someone who just doesn't care and is going to sell a gram of shatter to grandma who's never tried this before. And things are just not going to go well. That it's so important to have the right budtender, and that you just need someone who listens and understands what you're asking for and is able to give it to you.
Mm-hmm. There's been a new thing about pay to play that started last year, or maybe even 2018 in California, where end caps are being sold at places like Planet 13 in Las Vegas for upwards of $50,000 a month, depending on how many stores you want and what premium shelf space you want, which is nothing new at a grocery store. Coca-Cola does that. They want, yeah, anywhere, right?
Co-op money.
So how's that going to
play on a front table, and you take a picture and you send it to the publisher and go, look, we're promoting your books. We take $50 off of our bill. Okay. And you earn $50 by promoting their books. Yeah, that happens in every industry. Sure. Go for it.
So how do you think that's going to affect brands and product being sold at a dispensary when it's hitting tourists right in the face who don't know any better, and the high turnover of budtenders who may be new or inexperienced? You couple that together, and is that going to maybe diminish certain brands if it's an isolate instead of FICO, or a real brand? I would think that would diminish the expectation, or even the respect of the industry, by just kind of pushing out garbage or inferior products.
Here's the thing though, at least with marijuana and the dispensaries, especially recreational. Let's not talk about medical anymore, just adult use. Anybody can walk in off the street, buy whatever they want. 9 times out of 10, they're just there for fun. They're not there. And if they are there for medical, it's because they live in a state that doesn't have medical and they want to get some whatever, or you know what I mean? Their state's medical program fell apart because they got recreational something. Medical patients do come on the adult use side, just not as often. But sometimes stoner boys are in line for a wax. Let them have it. Let them have the isolates and the 96% THC and stoned out of their minds. If that's what they want to buy, let them have it. It's just not, and that's for that particular customer. Grandma wants a low dose edible. Let's sell her the breath mints. You've got to have everything in stock for everybody that's coming into your store. This isn't, we all don't want the same things. And some days I want the sucker with 30 milligrams, and some days I want the joint. we all buy different things. We need as much range as possible. And this was the problem in the bookstore. You want to have all the books in the store. You just have to deal with the square footage that you've got. And depending on your state and in your market, in California and Colorado, I don't know about Vegas yet, but there are 12 different brownies to choose from. Which one are you going to stock in your store? That's when you have your budtenders start tasting brownies, because then you want them to stand behind the counter and go, "Ooh, I had that one. It was good. I had that one. It's not great." That's just as important. The non-recommendations and the honesty are just as important as the recommendations. And that these kids are standing by, this is retail. These kids are standing behind the counter for 10, 12, 15 bucks an hour plus tips. If those pay-to-play corporate cannabis companies are not directly paying those budtenders, if those budtenders don't like the product, they're not going to sell it. I don't care how much money you spend on the end cap. It's just, you can't buy product loyalty. You just have to create a good product. And not everybody wants to create a good product. Some people just want to sell marketing because marketing sells. Let them. There's enough room in this for everyone.
So moving on to page 97 of your book, talks about tips on how to save money at the dispensary, which could come in handy in places like Canada, where they have 10 milligram caps on edibles. So you're not going to see me anytime soon buying an edible in Canada. It's just crazy. So regardless of where you're at, I'd love to know your thoughts on how to save some money at a dispensary. What are your tips?
The one thing that's important, and in Illinois, they're doing this now. They're selling shake and trim and everything else. Is to know the grades of flour. Is to know what is A-grade flour, what's not great flour. Sometimes I walk in the dispensary and I feel flush. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I need to budget as well when I go in, and how long can I stretch this? And a 10 milligram edible isn't going to do anything for me either. I make my own edibles. I buy flour. I make my own. I make my own hand cream and everything else, because what I can buy in the dispensary, they can only put 100 milligrams in the container. They're limited by that. I can make the same container at home with twice as many milligrams. So it's much more effective. To save money, you really do have to do it yourself a little bit. Just because you can make the brownie at home for so much cheaper if you buy the flour and cook it into the butter and use the butter in your brownie, rather than buying the brownie at the store.
Yeah, I'm waiting for 420 to stock up. So I'm going to be one of those hoarders on 420. Every year I go to 20 stores on 420 just to kind of get a good gauge of the greater Seattle area, the King County. And I've noticed that 2 years later, those 420 sales prices become the everyday low budget store prices. So it's been interesting to kind of see, the dollar joint on 420, like you can go to your low discount store and get those every day. So yeah, I'm definitely waiting for 420 to stock up.
I was driving home from yoga today and was like, oh, all of 420 has been canceled. The CDC said no events for 8 weeks over 50 people. That means all of April. 420 is done. So without the big events, I don't know if dispensaries are going to do better, because people don't have those concerts and parties and extra things to go to, and they just have the dispensary. Maybe the dispensaries will get more people. I don't know how it's going to affect the industry, but it's going to.
Yeah, that's a fascinating point, because Vancouver, BC probably has one of the largest in North America with their protest festival there. And I've wanted to go up there, but it's not going to happen this year. That is totally canceled. And so in Washington, it's a felony to maintain and operate a marijuana lounge or even incite consumption. So we don't have places to go on 420 and haven't. So I don't know if that's necessarily going to affect it. But what I have seen is some of the stores are making it mandatory to pre-order. So you can't even go into the store until they've approved and sent you a thing saying you can now come and pick it up and pay for it. Still can't pay online. That would be
if I just spent an entire 2 hours sterilizing a store, sanitizing everything, I don't want you coming in and touching everything. Yes, I'm just going to hand you your bag too. In Illinois, they're doing the same thing. A lot of the medical and rec, they've dropped the rec and they're just doing medical, and you've got to call ahead. And that's what I'm guessing. I went to the dispensary last week. I haven't been this week. So I'm not sure what it's like over there now, but there was long lines for recreational. I'm wondering if that's not going to happen anymore. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, there are some because first come first serve. So if you want that $30 or $40 ounce or whatever the crazy deal is,
Right.
like just on Black Friday when they're offering TVs for $50 while supplies last, it'll be interesting to see if you're not allowed to stand in line, what that does to those huge discount sales.
I know. We'll see. The cultivators. I mean, that I used to pump out product for 420, and we didn't really make a lot of money. This was for brand recognition.
Mhm.
You have to discount it so much to get it to sell for 420 sales that
Mhm.
it wasn't profitable.
Mhm.
But and now, and only because I have an Illinois medical card now, and then once Missouri gets up and running, I'll switch. But right now I'm in Illinois, and prices are sky high. I mean, my jaw dropped when I saw the recreational menu and how much they were charging for cartridges and edibles and stuff. It's ridiculous. But the cultivators cannot keep up with the demand. Every plant that's coming down is going right out the door. So they can sell, they can name their price at this point. Basically, I don't think they care about 420 sales.
So just out of curiosity, are you seeing $80 grams of RSO and $60 grams of carts and $30 grams of flour?
So that's how it was when Illinois first started. When product first came on the market, yes, a gram of CO2 oil was $80. I could not believe it. And that was the first couple of cultivators that came online. And that we were, I think, like number 6 or number 7. I mean, the little nonprofit, we didn't have money to race to be first to market. We couldn't afford that. So we came along a little later. And then to get into the stores, yes, I had to drop prices below those extreme prices, which I didn't want to charge anyway, to get in. And then everything started to come down. With Illinois, it's a supply and demand right now. They gave all of the cultivators some time to build out their facilities and create more grow space, but I think they're still in construction. I don't think they've added the extra plants yet for recreational, so they're still just trying to keep up with the demand.
Mm-hmm. Well, the cover of your book is interesting with the woman smoking a joint because pre-rolls are the number one product generally sold in stores. I think as a category, concentrates are number one, but as an individual SKU, pre-rolls dominate no matter where they're at. And it was fascinating to find out the demographic being white women 50 and older being the number one people to buy pre-rolls out of convenience, or maybe it's the stigma, like they can just get rid of it and be like, I don't smoke, or
Yep.
whatever that is. So with that, you have part 4 on the book, which is inhaling cannabis fast and efficient. So have you seen that wherever you go, that pre-rolls are also equally as popular?
Pre-rolls are popular for a couple of reasons. One, it's a gram or less. So it's a way to go, oh, I've never tried that strain before. If I buy a whole gram, it's going to cost more. I'll just get a joint of it. And then I can try that strain. And that's, cultivators should be putting their good weed in the joints. They don't. They put B grade into the joints. They should be using A grade because that's how people judge strains.
Mm-hmm.
And now when I was, especially in dispensaries in Denver, when my friends would come to Denver to visit, yes, they would rather buy 3 different pre-rolls than buy an eighth of all the same thing. Just then they could try 3 different strains. It's just part of the variety, I think. And honestly, it's the filter tip. You're walking in a dispensary for the first time, you've been on the black market your whole life. That filter tip is amazing. And
Mm-hmm.
it solves so many problems. And now that they're making the smaller joints, a quarter gram, a third of a gram, that really are one serving instead of a whole gram in a joint, even that I've got to put out 3 or 4 times, and then I've got to mess, and then I'm just unrolling it and throwing it in my chillum anyway. But that, yeah, with the pre-roll, you just get a little bit, and you get to try something new, and right when you're done, out the window it goes. So I think it really is convenience, and now that we're doing the smaller joints in the smaller, cuter packaging, I think that's going to keep going. That and vape pens are just going to, because even that cute little joint, I can't smoke at Target, but I can smoke my vape pen at Target.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it fits the traditional retail cues of price and convenience. Those are the top 2 decision makers for people.
Mm-hmm.
Is it cheap and is it convenient?
Right, exactly.
So there's an interesting comment you made that smoking cannabis is healthier than eating a cheeseburger. So can you talk about that you mentioned on page 112 of your book?
people get very concerned about the smoking, and is the smoking bad for me? And I'm not claiming anything. I looked at the studies, and the studies have shown, they studied the lungs of marijuana smokers, and cigarette smokers' lungs don't look great. I smoke cigarettes. They show me the photos all the time, trying to get me to quit. Marijuana smokers' lungs don't look like that. They are still inhaling smoke, which is an irritant. And especially now with, the virus, people are real concerned about their lungs. But somehow, even with all the smoke they're inhaling and all that irritant, marijuana smokers have really good lung capacity. They have healthy lungs. They don't have the tissue damage that you see in cigarette smokers, unless they also smoke a cigarette. And the theory is that the marijuana in the smoke is just as healing as the smoke is damaging. And the smoke just on itself, sitting next to a campfire, it's the same kind of smoke. If you inhale that, it's an irritant in your lungs. You shouldn't be having that kind of smoke in your lungs, but it's not really causing any severe, permanent, long-term damage. You get away from the irritant and you're fine. So that people associate the risks of cigarette smoking with the risks of marijuana smoking, and it's not the same. And I just wanted to make sure that people's fears were, the anxiety was lowered a little bit on that.
So a lot of people will probably bypass smoking altogether and go straight to the edible. But the quintessential edible experience has been waiting 20 minutes and saying, that didn't work, I'm going to eat another one.
Right.
So part 5 of your book on edibles, cannabis, calm and tasty, you talk about that you can't overdose, but you can overdo. What do you mean by that?
Well, and that's the number one thing that scares people off. Oh, I tried an edible and it didn't go well, I'm never doing it again. That's the problem. And the problem is they just had too much. Everybody's got a different tolerance level. And if you've never had it before, you don't know what your tolerance is. That's why I don't mind that the edibles are capped at 10 milligrams. That's fine. For most of the population, that's fine. You and I are the weirdos. They can't make edibles for us because somebody else is going to eat 30 milligrams and then fall over because they should have had 5 or 10. I am doing very informal. I'm just collecting data everywhere I go. My theory is that people with a very high alcohol tolerance, all my friends that own bars that can drink all day long, they can't handle their weed at all. And I have no alcohol tolerance. I have 2 martinis, I will fall over. I have 3 and I'm passed out. I cannot drink. I have to substitute in glasses of water if I'm going out with people that are drinking a lot because I can't keep up. But I can smoke all day and be fine. So I think you sort of have one or the other. And if you do, if you know that you have a very high alcohol tolerance and you haven't tried an edible, those people I start with 5 milligrams. I have friends my age, they're men, they're almost 50. They cannot handle 10 milligrams of THC. It's too much. They can drink a case of beer in a couple of hours, but they need to stick to 5 milligrams of THC. So that until you know your dose, that's why I like to start small, because you need to start small and see what it is. We don't want people to have a bad experience before they have a good experience. And the easiest way to have a bad experience is just to have too much.
I'm curious too, if some of those people are running on fumes with their ECS, if their endocannabinoid system doesn't have CBD, THC, then they're incapable of doing it. If they take an isolate that's super high, 97% of an isolate, your body might be freaking out. And so I've been kind of curious, sitting on the sidelines, wondering if cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome has something to do with people who are deficient, who don't have cannabinoids in their system, and when they go heavy on a dab that's an isolate, if they're just freaking their system out. Do you have an opinion on that?
I do think people, just like some people have good immune systems and some people don't. I think the stronger your cannabinoid system, the more efficiently you use the cannabinoids, so the less you need. I think a high tolerance is a sign of a really bad endocannabinoid system. I think mine is shot because I can eat 100 milligram edible and just keep on going, doing math. It doesn't really faze me. I think my system is such a mess that I can take on all those milligrams and be okay. I think people that have a strong system and just need a few milligrams, they have a better endocannabinoid system. It's more efficient and it works better. So I do think that's a huge factor. I think it's the number one factor is the strength of your endocannabinoid system as your tolerance level. I wish we could, predict that and have some sort of chart that we can all look at and figure out how many milligrams we need based on the strength of our system, but we have no way to test it. But I do think that's a major factor.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see if Israel can come out with that. I think they're the ones who figured out the ECS in the early 90s.
Right.
So you talked about topicals earlier as sensuous and pain relieving.
Mm-hmm.
So topicals, they reduce pain and increase beauty, as you talked about in page 182. So are you still making your own topicals?
I am. I just made some this weekend because I figured I'm going to be trapped in the house for a while, and that I can find some topicals at the store right now, but all of them are 100 milligrams. And a lot of them are solid balms and things I don't like to dig out of jars. I'm picky about my things. I haven't really found a cream that I like that's got the dosage that I want at the price that I want. So I buy flour and make my own. And that way I just made I used 2 ounces of coconut oil that each had 100 milligrams and then 2 ounces of mango butter and melted those together and then chilled them and whip them into a cream, and that's enough hand cream and foot cream and back cream. And I don't know why my shoulder's killing me today, but I'm going to rub some in there. That will last me until summer. And that was, 2 grams of flour that I put in there. So I like to make I make my own face oil because I can't find an overnight face serum at the dispensary. Nobody started making anti-aging beauty products yet with the THC. They've started with the CBD, but not the THC. So until they do, I'm going to make mine at home.
So smoking is probably one of the fastest ways. Like if you have an issue and you want it to be absorbed, smoking it is quick. Also, like a tincture or something, especially if it's got nano in it, it'll cross that blood-brain barrier a lot faster. And yet topicals, for me, I like using it because, as I mentioned, C3, C4 has subluxation of the spine. And so I've got a lot of issues where topicals work really well for me. I really like the transdermal patch, which we'll get into in a moment. But topicals are a great way of alleviating that inflammation and pain, especially if you don't smoke.
Mm-hmm. I did not fully appreciate topicals until I turned 40 and started getting like they're not sore, but they're just stiff, like stiff knuckles. And my hands started throbbing in yoga. And it's kicking in. And my neck is just killing me. I do, when I make my topicals, I do throw in a little DMSO to make them just a little bit transdermal so they sink in a bit more. So I do get a little high from my cream, but I just do that for me. And then I think it helps my neck more.
So you've got some recipes in here with ingredients and how to make it. One of the things that you've listed on here is suppositories on page 190.
Yes.
And when I had interviewed the editor of Edibles magazine back in August, he had mentioned that suppositories for him were a performance-enhancing drug. Mm-hmm. He had used suppositories to test it out and then was invited to a bowling tournament. And so he didn't know he was going to have to go bowling. So he's got this suppository going on, and then all of a sudden he gets in this zone, and he's not a bowler, but he bowled a near perfect game. And so he was making a joke about how it's a performance enhancer and that it just got him in this zone, and he got really, really high from a suppository because it bypasses the liver and all of your filters. Mm-hmm. And so obviously if you have a serious issue like cancer or anything else, I think suppositories are always the go-to. Do you have any good experience in the medical field using suppositories?
My second claim to fame beyond terpenes on the label is that I was the second cannabis producer to put suppositories on the market. Somebody in California, I did it in Illinois. Somebody in California beat me by like 2 weeks, and they had a publicist, so everybody knew about it. And I had zero marketing budget at the nonprofit. So I really didn't have the opportunity to tell Edibles Magazine that we had just made the suppository. I did not bother with a press release, but we put them out. And in Illinois, it was very low patient numbers. We didn't have a lot of people coming in. And not a lot of people buy the suppositories, but the ones that do buy a lot. And that might be the only thing they ever buy. But that's what really works for them. They sort of stock up for the month. And we at one point were almost making custom batches just because it's so few customers buy it, but they buy so much that you really do need to focus on it. It's wildly helpful for some people. It skips the entire digestive system. Your body absorbs, your vagus nerve is right there, and it just picks up all of those milligrams and gets it through the body really fast for intense level 9, 10 nerve pain that nothing else will touch. Suppository is the way to go. That's the best pain relief I've seen in anything. And with a suppository, then you can put 100 milligrams into someone's system, and they'll feel high, but they're not going to feel 100 milligrams high. You can get a lot of milligrams into their body without overdoing it. If they were to eat that many milligrams in a cookie, they'd get more stoned than they would with that in the suppository. I think our most popular formula was 100 milligrams, and it was 50 milligrams of THC and 50 CBD. That's what people really liked.
Yeah, the 1-to-1 is phenomenal. Back in 2015, that was easily what I thought was going to be the next blue dream. I thought the 1-to-1 ratio was going
No, people hate it. They never buy it.
Seriously? Well, maybe they just don't know. They don't have...
It's like trying to get kids to eat their vegetables. All the ones that want THC are like, no, I heard CBD makes you less high, and they won't buy it. And then the ones that want CBD are like, no, I don't want to get stoned. So yeah, splitting them out, 1-to-1s are the least popular. It's like trying to get people to eat broccoli. It's so annoying. But it's the most medicinally beneficial, the best high, and the hardest to sell.
So I would just say that that's novice individuals in a recently regulated or medical state. I think once things settle down, I do believe that 1-to-1 will be incredibly popular. I've been waiting 5 years and it still hasn't gained the popularity, but maybe I'm not the bellwether I thought I was.
I know. I beat that drum more than any other drum. THC and CBD together, not apart. I don't eat hemp. I don't want to try any CBD only products. I've poured bottles of that stuff down my brother's throat and then watched him have a seizure 10 minutes later. Nope. I do not eat the hemp, none of it. And I like Blue Dream. I like high THC strains. I don't like the anxiety and paranoia that comes along with it. I am one of the few people that goes to the dispensary and has to tell the budtender, no, I don't want to know what has the highest THC. I don't give a shit. Tell me what smells the best.
Well, aside from being a terrible strain name, green crack is way too edgy. I can't smoke that. It just makes me way too aggravated. It's weird.
It's too much in that, and I can't handle. I'm one of the few people on this earth that just can't stand cocaine. I can't anything speedy. I can't even take Ritalin. None of it. Anything that makes me too racy, right? And green crack is one of the worst. Durban, anything with Durban poison in it is horrible for me. Any of the diesels they're just too much THC, too much sativa. I just feel like paranoid and like someone's out to get me. It's not a fun high. And that I do mix. My dispensary lately has had this 1-to-1 strain called Metahaze. But it smells good. It's a good strain. And I've been mixing that with the higher THC stuff just to sort of have a little variety and get a mix of terpenes. But too much THC for me does not work.
Let's switch gears a little bit from pain to pleasure. Page 203 talks about lubes. There's a couple products out there that are lubricants and seem to be fairly popular with the ladies. What's your experience with manufacturing lubes?
That's fine. The number one thing that has to be talked about, the most important thing, I feel irresponsible if I don't say this ahead of time. You cannot use oil-based lubricants with condoms. The condom will not work. I went to Catholic school. We got good sex education. We got drilled in this. We were not getting pregnant. No oil with a condom. If you need to use condoms, you need a water-based lubricant. And there is a recipe in the book for that. You use arrowroot powder or cornstarch and water, and you mix it up on the stove, and you add your an alcohol-infused tincture rather than an oil-infused tincture, and add that to the water-based lube, and then you can use the cannabis-infused lube with condoms. If you're not using condoms, then you can use the oil-based. And when I made my 2 ounces of cream oil, I also made 2 ounces of coconut oil and added just a little flavoring, and put in a little thing. That's the lube container. And I got it at Whole Foods the other day, because if you just squeeze this, then it squirts some out. So it's just infused coconut oil, and adding a little flavoring kind of makes it a little fun. And that's it. It's the easiest product to make. And it's the most successful one.
Offline, you mentioned some type of transdermal patch, which I'm a big fan of. There was a charity race where we had to climb the stairs of the Space Needle. I think it's the equivalent of 55 stories. And I did it in 10 minutes and 10 seconds, which wasn't even close to being the fastest. But again, I smoke a lot of blunts. And so for me to even finish it, I was happy with that, and wouldn't have been able to do it without a transdermal patch. And yet a lot of people, when I made that post on Facebook, were like, you should have just thrown your money away. It would have been more efficient. And these are individuals who have been in the industry for 4, 5, 6, 7 years. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them were like, oh, you got to wait. They're still not available, or they still don't work. So I think there's a lot of misinformation, I would say, about it. And you've taken the next step. You're making temporary tattoos that are essentially transdermal patches made for PMS.
Yes, they're cramp stamps.
Cramp stamps. I love it. Where are they available? How'd you come up with that?
They will be available in Missouri once dispensaries open, which is why I'm sort of twiddling my thumbs and waiting for them to start growing the plants. They will be in Missouri. I'm talking to another company about doing them in Florida and Massachusetts. And if the Netflix show takes off, they'll be on there. We'll see how that goes. But, and yeah, I like the patches. I don't know who's saying that the patches don't work. Have they tried the Mary's medicinals? Those patches work. They work really well. I put them on my brother when he walked my sister down the aisle at her wedding. We didn't want him to have a seizure in the church, and he didn't. I've used the patches. The first time I put it on, I know very well when you work in the cultivation, you should not wear flip-flops to work. And I did it anyway, and I kicked a grow table, and my foot was throbbing. And I put the patch on the wrong ankle. I wasn't even paying attention. But man, it knocked out that throbbing, oh my God, I just kicked the grow table in a flip-flop pain, which was ridiculous. And it was gone in 20 minutes. Those patches are really effective. It's just they look like nicotine patches. They're not cute. You don't want to take a picture of them and put them on Instagram. It looks like a medicinal patch. And so I work with a pharmacist in my product development just to make sure that I'm not making something that doesn't work. And we were talking about temporary tattoos for medicine. They have these temporary tattoos that you can put on that have lights in them and that test your blood and that you can hook up machines to, and all of these medicinal tattoos. So once I started looking into what goes into the ink and what goes into the paper and all of that, I figured out I could make a really pretty patch. So I know they will all be metallic. They will be shiny and sparkly and fun. And that we will do a sort of a 1-to-1. And even my whole thing is I won't make a product that's only THC or only CBD. They've got to have both. But I get it. And the patches for me at 15 milligrams are too much. So the tattoos are all going to be 10 milligrams. And one will be 5 and 5. And one will be 8 milligrams of THC, 2 milligrams of CBD. And one will be 2 milligrams of THC and 8 milligrams of CBD. And there'll be different colors, and the boxes will be different colors, so you know which one is yours. Because that on a monthly basis, sometimes you want the high CBD one, sometimes you want the high THC one, sometimes you want the 1-to-1. It depends. And for everyone's menstrual cycles are different, and their pain is different. So I wanted the full range of options. And the transdermal application, they go on the wrist or the ankle, right by a bloodstream, so they get right in. And then they last a lot longer than an edible. A transdermal application where the cannabis goes through your skin and sinks in, gets in your bloodstream, and you get high. last a good 6 hours versus 4 for an edible.
Hmm. I wonder if people with celiac would use that, because I just ate something that had gluten and my wife was making fun of me because I got really bad cramps, and she's like, just deal with it. You're such a wuss. I mean, it was debilitating. The cramps were so intense, like it just stopped me in my tracks. I was like, whoa, I can't move. Hold on a second. But I think she's so used to it, having PMS her whole adult life. I'm wondering that if people with allergies would use that regardless of sex or gender.
I think so. Men have asked they want cram stamps too. I need to do a really butch one. I was thinking maybe like the mom would scroll with the heart. We could do like a boy tattoo that wouldn't be a cramp stamp. That could just be sort of for pain or for fun. And that the metallic gold and silver and tattoos are popular with the kids today. They're like little festival wear. So these tattoos are for fun too, but it's just, I have found the transdermal application for PMS is the way to go. It really is the most effective for the physical effects, the cramps and everything else, but also the emotional and mental, like I want to fight with everyone and then cry. And I don't know why, and it'll go away tomorrow, but today I'm insane. The transdermal helps bring that down to a manageable, I can function in society level. And that's why I like marijuana for all kinds of PMS symptoms, but it really does sort of cover everything.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think we've covered nearly everything in this book. There's a lot of really cool recipes, a lot of really great information, and we've kind of skimmed over a lot of it. Is there anything that I have left out that you'd like to cover?
I know there was a lot of stuff. There are recipes in the book for boys too. I did a mustache wax that can also be a lip balm. It's the same thing. And then there's a beard oil in there as well. Although the CDC said, you're supposed to shave off your beard.
I know. I'm holding out though. We are
talking about you, or are they talking about
Seattle.
The beer guys with like the long beards? I think those are supposed to go. I'm not sure, but
I'm holding out. I'm waiting. I'm waiting before I trim it. It's been on my face for so long. I don't feel like it's part of my personality, but I do like it. So it's warm.
Well, there is a beard oil recipe in there so that you can make it look nice.
Oh, it smells good with probably some terpenes in there.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And the anti-aging effect of cannabis in any kind of treatment is kind of unbelievable. So that, I really like that. I think once people really see that and we start getting products in dispensaries that are more than just for fun or for medicine, where they are actual beauty products, then I think we're going to need to build some more end caps in dispensaries, and it's going to get more competitive because products are going to get more exciting.
So before we wrap this one up, Nikki, you've got your own dog, and I'm sure you've had your own experience with some scary fireworks. What's your experience with using CBD for anxiety in pets?
Okay, so we learned this when we were in Denver for 4th of July. And at the dispensary, we were selling dog treats. We had dog treats on the shelf. And I don't think they had any CBD in them. I think they were pretty much just 5 milligrams of THC. But Henry had a treat on 4th of July, and instead of freaking out about the fireworks and hiding under the table, he just napped calmly. And that, I mean, he's a little guy. He's 19 pounds, 20 when he's got long hair. So 5 milligrams is kind of more than he can handle. I break those treats in half. And now I do make him his own anxiety treats for thunderstorms and everything else. And for that, when I make those treats, and there is the dog treat recipe in the book, but when I make those, I don't decarb, so that I'm dealing with THCA and CBDA, which are anti-inflammatory and anti-anxiety, yet don't get them high. So that way I can get, I don't have to worry so much about the dose. If he gets a few extra milligrams, it's fine because he's not going to get stoned anyway. And those really do seem to help him. And he's 9 now, so he's kind of getting up there to the point where I've started wondering, like, when should we start him on the glucosamine? But that we will start doing treats just for pain too, as he gets older. I did that with the last dog. So, but yeah, not decarbing and dealing with THCA is my best, like, let's not get the dog too high advice.
So decarboxylation, for those that don't know, is when you heat up cannabis. When you burn it, you're activating it. So you're changing it from THCA to THC. So that's what that means. But this isn't an excuse for bad dog owners who live in apartments and don't walk their dogs, and their dogs get all high strung. This is for 4th of July and New Year's, when there's excitable anxiety with fireworks and stuff. So walking your dog you should do first. But if there's environmental factors that you can't control, like fireworks, CBD is a perfect relief for that anxiety in pets, right? Whether it's a female or male dog.
Exactly. And that we did have in the dispensary in Denver, this woman came in with her dog sobbing. She had just been at the vet. The dog had, I don't even know what all the dog had, but the dog was not long for this world. And so she was trying to do as many milligrams as she could to try to help the cancer. And that's when we switched from the THC to the THCA, so that she could get more milligrams into the dog for the pain relief. And she was trying, I don't think the dog did well with the cancer, but I understand the desperation. So that's why, we want to make sure we're not getting them too stoned. But it is very helpful for them. Cats, I don't know. I don't know anything about cats. They make me sneeze.
I used a 20-to-1 when my dog had a mast cell tumor. It was really, really big on her 25 pound frame. It was a gigantic mast cell tumor. So the 20-to-1, I think, was maybe a little bit too much for her. But, when you have something serious like that, you could just see the wrinkles in her pug forehead. She was a pug beagle, and they would just melt away, and then you just see in her eyes, she's like, oh, thank you. Even though she just laid there. It was sad to watch, but at the same time, it's brings you a lot of happiness and pleasure, knowing that you're relieving them from pain and stress and anxiety, whether it's cancer or fireworks. It's a suitable ailment, I think, a suitable medical product to use for pets.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Nikki Furrer, you're the author of A Woman's Guide to Cannabis. How can people get a hold of you?
Get a hold of me. The social media stuff is all Get High Like a Lady. That was the original title. My publisher, Workman, God bless them. I love them. They do amazing books. They do all the Sandra Boynton kids books. They do What to Expect When You're Expecting. They wanted to do a book about marijuana and women. They are not hip, slick, and cool. They are not trendy. They worked very hard on that. I've never seen a publisher worked so hard on a cover as they worked on this one, and they finally nailed it. But the sales department was not okay with Get High Like a Lady as a title. So we had to put a grown-up title on there, and I got it tacked on at the end. So that all the social media is Get High Like a Lady, and my email is just my name at Gmail. So that's not hard.
Awesome. Yeah, I picked this up in Burien at Sitka, a woman-owned business. They do they make stained glass and have all kinds of local stuff for Burien in the Pacific Northwest, and lots of books of your books up in there as well. So
awesome. Oh, that's great.
So yeah, this is a woman's guide to cannabis, using marijuana to feel better, look better, sleep better, and get high like a lady. All right, with that, we're going to roll this one up. I want to thank my guest, Nikki Furrer. She's a cannabis lawyer, cultivator, CEO of Fleur, and of course, author. Nikki, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
I'm Josh Kincaid. This is The Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't. And I'm out.